In the previous video, we changed how you see the work, how you see creativity, how you see money, how you see discipline, how you see direction, and also how you see the role of the modern designer. Not just as someone who makes screens, not just as someone who operates tools, but as someone who can direct the whole system. That was the foundation. But there is a problem. Knowing the right path does not mean you will walk it, right? You can understand what you should do, you can agree with it, you can even feel excited by it, and still, when it's time to act, something inside you interrupts. Not always loudly, not always dramatically. Sometimes it is quiet. A thought, a hesitation, a distraction, a comparison, a sudden urge to start something new, a feeling that you are not ready, a feeling that other people are ahead of you, right? A feeling that you need one more tool, one more course, one more perfect moment before you begin. That is what this video is about. The thing that basically interrupts and destroys the foundation, the fear, the doubt, the distractions, the pattern that make people stop even when they know what they should do. I call those the demons, not because they are mystical, not because they are impossible to defeat, but because they are the things that follow people silently. And if you do not identify them, they keep driving, they keep controlling you. But we are not just going to name them, right? Naming them is not enough. Recognition is only the first step. So in this video, I want you to understand how each pattern shows up, what damage it causes, how to recognize it in real time, and what to do when it happens, basically. Because the goal is not to feel inspired for like 10 minutes, right? The goal is to become harder to stop so you can thrive as a freelancer. So let's start with the first one. Fear and resistance. Lesson 1.8, fear and resistance. Fear is one of the most obvious obstacles and also one of the most disguised. Most people do not say, I'm afraid. They say, I need more time. I need to research more. I need to improve my portfolio. I need to learn one more tool. I need to wait until I feel ready. And sometimes that is true. Sometimes you really do need more practice. Sometimes you really do need more skill. Sometimes the work is not ready yet, right? But many times that is not discipline. It is fear basically wearing intelligent clothes. Fear rarely appears as fear. It appears as preparation, it appears as perfectionism, it appears as a strategy, it appears as being realistic, right? But the result is the same. You do not move, you do not publish, you do not apply, you do not reach out, you do not show the work, you do not make the decision. You stay in the safe place where nothing can be judged, basically, right? And that's the danger. Because if you never ship, you can always believe you had potential. Potential is comfortable. Execution is exposed. Once you execute, the fantasy becomes real. The work can be seen, the work can be criticized, the work can fail, right? And this is where resistance begins. Resistance is basically the force that appears between intention and action, right? You decide to work. This is an example. Then suddenly your brain wants to clean the room. You decide to write, then suddenly you need to check your messages. You decide to build, then suddenly you need to reorganize your files. You decide to post, and suddenly you have to, I don't know, like redesign your concept project for a sixth time, right? But you have to be honest with yourself if this keeps happening all the time. And some of it is normal, right? Like sometimes you have to clean your room, sometimes you have to check messages or whatever. But if you do it all the time because you are basically trying to avoid exposure, that's the problem. The obstacle is not always time. The obstacle is not always tools. The obstacle is not always knowledge, right? Sometimes the obstacle is that the next step makes you visible, and visibility creates a risk. And this matters deeply for designers because design is not hidden work. Design is judged, right? People look at it, people react to it, people compare it. People can say this is good or this is not good. And if your identity is too attached to the work, every piece of feedback feels like a judgment on you as a person. That makes you hide and avoid. So, how do you deal with this, right? Not by waiting until fear disappears. That is the mistake. Most people think that courage means that they finally feel ready. But readiness is not always a feeling that comes before action. Often, readiness is created by action. So, here's the rule: when fear appears, make the action smaller, but keep it visible. Do not retreat into fake preparation. Make it small enough to do today, but real enough to count. If you are afraid to publish a full case study, for example, publish one design breakdown. If you're afraid to contact 10 potential clients, send one serious message. Do something. If you are afraid to ask for public feedback, ask one trusted person for a specific feedback. If you are afraid to build the whole project, build the first page. If you're afraid to record the perfect video, record the rough version first, right? Fear basically wants you to choose between perfection and hiding. Do not accept that choice. Choose exposure at a smaller scale, and then you scale from that. That is how you train courage. You do not train courage by thinking about courage. You train courage by doing the next visible thing while fear is still present. There is a scene in the Lord of the Rings movie where Aragorn stands before battle, and the men around him are afraid. And he does not pretend that he's above them, right? He does not say, "You are afraid and I'm not." He acknowledges that the same fear that they have could also take hold of him. But then he still asks them to stand, right? That's the point. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is action while fear is present. A warrior does not become brave because his body feels nothing. He becomes brave because he moves while fear is still in the room. And for us, the battle is different. It's not a physical war. It is the moment you publish work, the moment you ask for feedback, the moment you reach out, the moment you charge properly, the moment you build instead of only planning, right? That is where courage is trained, not in theory, in action. So here's an exercise. The next time you feel resistance, write down three things. The first one is, what am I avoiding? Two, what am I afraid might happen if I do it? And three, what is the smallest visible version of this action that I can complete today? That third question matters, not the smallest thing you can think about, the smallest thing you can plan, the smallest visible action, something that creates contact with reality, okay? A message, a prototype, a post, a request, a decision. When you do these little things consistently, that is how fear loses authority. Not because it disappears, but because it stops controlling your next move. And remember, the goal is not to become fearless, okay? The goal is to stop letting fear make the decision. Lesson 1.9, Imposter Syndrome. Yep, a tough one and a very common one. So, imposter syndrome is the feeling that you do not belong, that you are not qualified, that someone is going to find out that you are not as good as they think you are. And for designers, this can be especially strong because there is always someone better with typography, someone with cleaner interfaces, someone with a bigger client list, someone with a stronger portfolio, someone who seems more confident, right? Someone who knows more code, someone who uses AI better, someone who looks like they became basically what you are trying to become. So you look at them, you look at yourself, and you think, who am I to do this? Who am I to charge for this? Who am I to call myself a designer? Who am I to lead? Who am I to direct, right? Who am I to build, right? You start having doubt. But here's the part you have to understand. Imposter syndrome does not always mean the same thing. Sometimes it means you are entering a new level, and sometimes it means that there is a real gap that you need to close. You need to learn the difference. Because if you treat every feeling of insecurity as false, you become delusional in a negative way. But if you treat every feeling of insecurity as proof that you do not belong, you become paralyzed. So here's the distinction, there is a level gap and there is a skill gap, okay? A level gap means you are doing something new and your identity has not caught up yet. You are taking on more responsibility, you are working with better clients, you are charging more, you are building more serious things, you are speaking with more authority. And because this is new, it feels uncomfortable. That discomfort does not mean you are fake. It means you are adapting, right? But the skill gap is different. A skill gap means that there is something real you need to improve. Your typography is weak, your spacing is inconsistent, your process is messy, your communication is unclear, you cannot explain your decisions, you cannot finish projects, you do not understand the tools enough, you are making promises your current skill cannot support. That requires honesty. The solution is not to pretend, the solution is to close the gap. So when imposter syndrome appears, you do not ask, how do I stop this feeling? Ask a better question. Is this a level gap or a skill gap? If it's a level gap, you need exposure. You need to keep taking action until the new level becomes familiar. If it's a skill gap, you need practice, right? You need to identify the weaknesses and improve them deliberately. This turns insecurity into useful information. Now, here is a practical solution. Build evidence. Do not try to defeat imposter syndrome with empty affirmations, saying things like, I'm amazing, I'm the best, I deserve everything. That might feel good for a moment, but if there is no evidence under it, it's fragile. Confidence built on nothing breaks quickly. Confidence built on evidence is different. So create an evidence archive, a simple document, a folder, a note, a page. And every time you finish something real, put it there. And it can be anything good. For example, a project you completed, a before and after, a piece of feedback, a problem you solved, a client result, a lesson learned, a design decision you can explain, a hard thing you did even though you were afraid. This matters because your brain will often forget the evidence when you feel exposed. When you're about to publish or charge more or speak or apply, your mind will tell you you have no proof. But if you have built proof, you can look at it, not to inflate your ego, but to stay grounded in reality. You are not perfect, obviously, but you are not empty either because you have evidence. And if you do not have enough evidence yet, that is not a reason to collapse. It is your assignment right now. Finish more, practice more, ask for feedback, improve one weak area, ship another project, explain another decision, right? Build the evidence, basically. The solution to imposter syndrome is not pretending that you are already complete. It is becoming the kind of person who can point to the work and say, I am still learning, but I'm not standing still. Lesson 1.10: The Comparison Trap. Comparison is dangerous because it looks useful. You can tell yourself, I'm studying the market. I'm looking for inspiration. I'm checking what good designers do. And sometimes that is exactly what you are doing. It's correct because studying good work matters, right? Taste matters, references matter. I always emphasize that. You should look at strong work all the time. You should definitely understand what excellence looks like. But there is a line. At first, comparison gives you information, then it starts taking your energy. You open someone's portfolio, then another, then another, then another, right? And slowly you are not learning anymore. You are measuring yourself against people whose full story you do not know. You basically compare your beginning to someone else's 10th year. You compare your unfinished work to someone else's polished case study. You compare your private struggle to someone else's public highlight. And that's one of the negative sides of social media, basically. And then you feel behind, you feel small, you feel late, right? You feel like you missed the moment. This is one of the most damaging beliefs for a designer. It's basically to say it is too late for me. But think about it, too late compared to what? Compared to who? Right? Most people are not actually black because there is no opportunity. They are black because they are constantly staring at other people's evidence instead of building their own. And comparison does something else as well. It distorts your direction. You see one designer doing beautiful minimal websites, so you want to become that. Then you see another designer doing wild 3D interactions, so you want to become that as well, right? Then you see someone making AI tools, so you want to become that. Then you see someone building an agency, so you want to become that. And suddenly your own path becomes unstable. You are not choosing direction. You are basically reacting to whoever looks impressive today. That is not a strategy. That is basically emotional steering. So, how do we fix it? You do not fix comparison by pretending other people do not exist. That is not realistic and it's not useful. Good references are important. Great work should challenge you, right? But you need a better way to look at it. Here's the rule. Basically, every reference session must end in application. If you look at another designer's work, you are not allowed to live with only a feeling. You need to live with a principle, right? Not they are better than me. That is not useful. Instead, something like their spacing feels consistent, their case study explains decisions clearly, their homepage has one strong idea, their navigation is simple, their motion supports the message, their project has strong hierarchy. Now you have something useful. You are not copying their identity. You are basically extracting a principle. Then you close the reference and you apply the principle to your own work. This is the difference between comparison and study. Comparison says, look at them, then look at you. You are behind. Study says, what principle can I learn? How can I apply it? What will I improve now? That changes everything. A very good historical example is Van Gogh. Van Gogh was deeply influenced by Japanese prints. He collected them, studied them, copied from them, and they changed the way he saw composition, color, flatness, space, and all that stuff, right? But the important part is this. He did not look at those prints and conclude, I am nothing. He did not use the references to destroy himself, right? He basically studied it, he absorbed it, He transformed it, right? And then he made something that became his own. That is the difference between comparison and study. Comparison looks at greatness and says, I am behind. Study looks at greatness and says, what can this teach me, right? One weakens you, the other sharpens you. Here is a practical exercise. Next time you look at references, use three columns. Column one, what I notice, okay? Column two, why it works. Column three, how I will apply it. All right, so here is an example of a finished exercise, right? So, what I notice, the page feels calm. Why it works? There is more space between sections, fewer competing elements, and clearer hierarchy. How I will apply it? I will remove one unnecessary section, increase spacing, and make the primary message stronger. This is a study. This is useful. But if you spend 1 hour scrolling, leaving feeling worse, you did not study. You punish yourself. You need to be honest about that, right? Comparison becomes useful only when it turns into a principle you can apply. The moment it makes you paralyzed, it's not longer inspiration, it's poison. Lesson 1.11, Shiny Object Syndrome. This one is everywhere now, especially because of AI. Every week, there is a new tool, a new workflow, a new platform, a new model, a new promise, a new shortcut, a new person saying this changes everything, right? And sometimes they are right. Sometimes they are right. Some tools really do matter. Some workflows are really powerful. Some changes are worth paying attention to. I'm not telling you to ignore technology, right? That would be absurd. This course itself is about AI web design, right? But there is a difference between using tools and being controlled by novelty, right? A tool should basically serve the work. It should not become a replacement for direction. If every new tool makes you abandon your current path, you do not have a tool problem. You have a direction problem, right? That's why I like one of Dieter Ram's principles. One of his principles is that good design is innovative, but the important part is not just innovation. So the important part is that innovation is not an end in itself. Technology creates possibilities, but the technology itself is not the point. The work is the point. The product is the point. The human need is the point, right? That is extremely relevant now because AI is powerful. New tools are powerful. New workflows can absolutely change what a designer can do, right? But the existence of a new tool does not automatically mean that you should change direction. The question is not, is this new? The question is, does this help the work become clearer, stronger, more useful, more polished, right? If the answer is yes, then use it. On the other hand, if the answer is no, it may only be novelty, wearing the costume of progress. Designers often fall into this trap because new tools create a feeling of progress. You watch a demo, you test a feature, you generate something impressive, you feel excited, it feels like a movement, right? But excitement is not the same as progress. Progress means something real becomes better, right? In the real sense of the word. If the tool helps you do that, then use it, as I said before. If the tool only gives you a temporary feeling that you are doing something, be careful with that. Because shiny object syndrome does not always look like laziness, right? It often looks like ambition. You tell yourself, I'm staying ahead, I'm learning fast, I'm adapting, I'm exploring, right? And sometimes you are, right? But exploration without commitment becomes wandering. At some point, you have to choose. Choose a project, choose a direction, choose a standard, choose a workflow, choose a problem, choose a solution, and then stay with it long enough for the work to mature. This is where many people fail, not because they are not talented, not because they are not smart, but because they keep changing the game before they can win anything. They start one thing, then another, then another, then another, and it's basically like a loop. And here's the thing, every beginning feels exciting, right? But to finish anything good requires discipline. That is why shiny objects are dangerous. They let you avoid the difficult middle, right? The middle is where problems appear. The middle is where your first idea is not enough. The middle is where you have to revise, debug, rewrite, redesign, simplify, explain, and keep going. Most people do not quit at the beginning. The beginning is easy, right? They quit in the middle. And shiny objects give them like an easy escape. So here's the rule, okay? No new tool gets adopted in the middle of a project unless it directly helps you finish the project you already started. This is important. I'm not saying that you cannot test tools, right? I'm saying that you need boundaries. And a new tool has to pass four questions. Question one, does this help me finish what I already started? Question two, does this solve a real bottleneck or it is just interesting? Question three, will I still care about this in like 2 weeks? Question four, am I exploring or am I escaping? That last question is the hardest because sometimes you are not learning. You are avoiding the difficult part of the thing you already chose. So create two spaces. One space for production, one space for exploration. Production is where you finish. Exploration is where you test. Do not confuse them, right? When you are in production, the question is, what helps me complete the work, right? When you are in exploration, the question is, what might be useful later? Both are valuable, right? But they are not the same mode. If you mix them constantly, you will feel busy, but you will not finish the work. So here's a practical exercise. Make a tool parking lot, okay? Every time a new tool appears, do not immediately change your workflow. Write it down. Explain why it might matter later, okay? And add what problem it might solve. Then continue working on the current project. Review the list later, okay? During a dedicated exploration time. This keeps you adaptive without becoming unstable because the goal is not to ignore new things. The goal is to remain on track. Tools are useful when they serve direction. They become dangerous when they replace direction. Remember that. Lesson 1.12, the dangers of arrogance. So let's talk about arrogance. And this one is very tricky because when people think about arrogance, they usually imagine someone loud, right? Someone obvious, someone who thinks they are better than everyone. But arrogance can be quiet. It can look like refusing feedback. It can look like thinking the basics are beneath you. It can look like not wanting to be corrected. It can look like believing you already know what the client needs before you understand the problem. It can look like rejecting discipline because you think that talent should be enough. It can look like being allergic to process. It can look like being more interested in being seen as a creative than becoming useful. This is dangerous for designers because design sits between taste, communication, business, technology, and human behavior. That means you are never done learning. The moment you believe you are above the fundamentals, you begin to decay. A useful example here is Kodak. Kodak was not a small company that simply did not understand cameras. Kodak was one of the giants of photography. In fact, Kodak invented the first digital camera in the 70s, I believe. And that is what makes the story powerful. The danger was not only ignorance, the danger was attachment. Attachment to the thing that had already made them successful. Film had built the empire, right? Film was familiar, film was profitable, film was the identity. And sometimes the thing that made you successful becomes the thing that makes it hard to see clearly. That can happen to companies, but it also happens to designers. You find a style that works, a process that works, a tool that works, a type of client that works, right? A way of thinking that works. And because it worked before, you start treating it like it should work forever. That's arrogance, right? Not loud arrogance, strategic arrogance, creative arrogance, right? Basically, the belief that yesterday's strength does not need to be questioned, right? But the work keeps changing, the market keeps changing, the tools keep changing, the standard keeps changing. So, humility is not weakness. Humility is how you stay responsive to reality. And the world will not warn you gently, right? Your work will simply stop improving. Your taste may stay sharp, but your execution becomes careless. Your ideas may sound interesting, but your delivery becomes unreliable. Your confidence may grow, but your results do not. This is a dangerous combination because confidence without humility turns into negative delusion. But humility is often misunderstood. Humility does not mean that you are worthless. It does not mean you have to pretend that you have no skill. It does not mean that you should hide your ambition. Humility means you remain available to improvement. It means you can say, I might be wrong. I can improve this. I miss something, right? The feedback hurts, but maybe there is something useful in it. The basics still matter. The work is not above correction. I'm not above the work. That last line matters, right? I'm not above the work. No matter how much experience you gain, you still have to respect the work. You still have to look carefully. You still have to revise. You still have to listen, right? You still have to make things better. So, how do we fight arrogance? We basically have to create a feedback relationship with the work. That means you stop asking only, do I like this? And you start asking better questions. So, for example, is this clear? Is this useful? Is this solving the problem? Is this aligned with the goal? Can someone understand it? Can the user move through it? Can the client defend it? Can the developer build it? Can this be simpler? Can this be stronger? Can this be more honest? Right? Those questions force you to return to the work itself, not your ego, not your image, not your desire to look talented, right? The work. And here's a practical rule. Before defending your work, name one thing that could be better. This is not self hatred, okay? This is discipline. If someone gives you feedback, your first instinct may be to explain why you made the decision, right? Sometimes the explanation is valid, but before you defend, pause and ask yourself what part of this feedback may be useful? What are they reacting to? What is the confusion? What did I fail to communicate? What weakness are they seeing? And let me be clear, you do not have to accept every piece of feedback. Some feedback is wrong, some feedback is poorly expressed. Some feedback comes from people who do not understand the goal. But even then, your first job is to listen, right? Before you protect yourself. Because arrogance protects identity, right? Humility protects improvement. So here's another exercise. Create a finishing checklist. Basically, before you call a design finished, check the fundamentals: hierarchy, spacing, typography, content, responsiveness, clarity, accessibility, flow, purpose, content. This matters because arrogance often says, I already know the basics, but the basics are not beginner things. The basics are permanent things. The best designers do not outgrow them, right? They return to them at a higher level. So the solution to arrogance is not insecurity, it is respect, okay? Respect for the craft, respect for the client, respect for the user, respect for the standard, and also respect for the version of yourself you want to become. So these are the demons that interrupt the foundation: fear and resistance, imposter syndrome, comparison, shiny objects, and arrogance. Different names, different forms, but they often lead to the same result. You basically stop. You delay, you hide, you drift, right? You protect your ego, you keep collecting information instead of building evidence. And that is why we have to name them, right? But now you have more than names, you have solutions. When fear appears, make the action smaller, but keep it visible. When imposter syndrome appears, ask whether it's a level gap or a skill gap, then build evidence. When comparison appears, turn the reference into a principle and apply it to your own work. When shiny objects appear, ask whether the new thing helps you finish or helps you escape. When arrogance appears, return to the work, listen before defending, and stay available to improvement. You have to keep in mind that all this doesn't solve everything instantly, right? You will still feel fear. You will still compare. You will still get distracted. You will still feel defensive. You will still have moments where you don't feel ready. But that's okay because the goal is not perfection. The goal is self awareness because awareness creates a pause. And in that pause, you get a choice. You can repeat the old pattern or you can respond to things differently. That's where growth happens, not in the fantasy version of you that never struggles, but in the real version of you that notices the struggle and keeps moving anyway, right? The designer who grows is not the one who never feels fear, is the one who feels fear and does the work anyway. It is not the one who never compares, right? We are human. It is the one who comes back to the path. It is not the one who never gets distracted. It is the one who learns to finish. It is not the one who, never feels proud of himself. It is the one who stays teachable. So it's not about perfection, it's about excellence. So now we have the foundation and we have named what interrupts it. In the next video, we will move into becoming. How failure shapes you, how emotion affects your work, why your future self is not as fixed as you think, and why discipline, when understood correctly, is not punishment. It is sweet. If you are following along, the complete course roadmap is linked in the description. And if you want to go through this with other designers, ask questions, and stay connected with the course, you can join the Web Designers Collective. It's a free community for designers following the course. Go to webdesignerscollective.com/join. I will see you in video 3.